I was born in my present residence here in Purcell, Richard Powless. I was named after, I never knew him, uncle, the same name. And so I'm still on the original homestead.
Okay. What was your name of your parents?
John, I don't remember my grandmother. Oh, my parents, Mark and Margaret Powless. Margaret was Stevens.
And do you remember the names of your grandparents?
John D. and I think Elizabeth Powless. I think she was a Baird. John D. He had an Indian name. I don't know what it means. Dagodick, they called him, or Godick. So,
That was on your
and then on my father's side. Then on my mother's side, there was Edward Stevens. And the only ones I remember, my grandmother was passed away before I was born. But my grandfather, John, I remember, and Edward Stevens, I remember him he lived up into the 50s, I think.
Well, tell me a little something about your your grandfather then, John D.
Well, what I remember of him, he died in 1929, so I would have been 4 years old. And I just remember his burial. He was buried here, and it was in March of 29. And I remember there was a snowstorm at that time, and they had the wakes at the house at that time, at the present house where I live now. And the hearse got stuck in our driveway. I remember that. And then Sam Stevens, he was one of my grandfather's brothers. They had team of horses at that time, and so they took a coffin and put it in his sleigh, a horse and sleigh, and then they I remember putting me in that sleigh with them, with the kids were small, and they brought us here to the church. And I remember a little bit before that, when my grandfather lived with us. That was his homestead, and we lived there with him, and he'd lead me around, and there was a tavern on the corner of J and U, and my father and grandfather had owned it at one time. And I remember my grandfather, John D. Dagodick, he must have. I must have slept with him because he had me by my hand, and when that place burned down, and I remember standing in a cornfield there, and the cornfield must have been in like July, it was like knee high, and that's what I remember him. And I always wanted to ask John what he remembered, my brother John, what he remembered about him. I don't know, I never heard it, but that's what I remember when they buried him. And there was a guy from Appleton, his name is Bill King. That's Mark's wife, Shirley, the dad. And he always told me that. He told me that he remembered when they buried him too. So that's what I remember of my grandfather.
All right. What do you remember about your father now, with his education and his occupation?
Well, where we lived there is mostly, I would say, truck farming. And I remember him working on a stevedore, as a stevedore when I was real small. But mostly farming there. There was always there was a big barn there. I remember having cattle there, or 6 or 7 cattle, and they had pigs and chickens and all of that. So it was mostly farming, and then they contract a lot with the canning companies, and him and my uncle Eugene, they worked together, and there was kind of a partnership with Tom McCarroll. He was a non-Indian that lived here. He was married to Oneida, and they were kind of in a partnership, and they planted a lot of cauliflower and cucumbers and that, mostly produce.
Did your dad ever tell you about where he went to school?
No, he never did tell me. I guess he went to Flandreau. They sent him away to Flandreau. That's about all I know. And my mother, she used to talk about being sent to Wittenberg. I guess there was a school there too for the Oneidas. And she went to school with different people from here. I guess a lot of Oneidas went to Wittenberg.
Was your dad involved in tribal politics?
In 1940 or 41, he was chairman. I was away at government school then. I think it was on 37 or 38. Him and my brother John and him were sent to Pipestone, Minnesota. That was a boarding school. And there, while we was away, I mean, from that time on, I was never home. I was always in government school. And he was chairman, I think it's 40 or 41, I really don't know.
Okay.
But I remember the superintendent at Pipestone, I guess they had them meetings, and there was a picture of him, all the chairmen at that time from that area, and the superintendent was J.W. Balmer, and he told me that he met my dad in Minneapolis and that kind of thing. So he was involved in tribal politics.
Did you ever get an opportunity to go with your dad to any of the
No.
when you came home to go to any meetings or anything?
No, I never. We were away there, and like when we were home in Small, he used to go visit a lot of people. He used to visit a lot with Eastman Cornelius, and I guess Eastman Cornelius was one of the first town of Oneida chairman. I don't know. But I remember he used to go visit Eastman Cornelius.
Yeah.
But my father used to go visit around the reservation quite a bit, and there was a group of Indians out south of the pier that they were Oneidas. He used to go visit them. They were back in the woods, and they were Oneidas. I forget their names. But he traveled around the reservation a lot.
And what about your mom? Did she? What was her school background?
Well, all I know is she went to Wittenberg. I don't know what grade but she was. There was probably 10 years difference in my mother and father. She was younger than him, and she was the disciplinarian in our family. My father was, did most of the work, but he never disciplined us very much. It was
Did your mother work out, or did she mostly work at home?
Well, mostly work at home, but it was till after we left, I guess. She never worked out while I was until they sent us away to government school. Maybe after that she worked out, because 1937 John and I were at Pipestone, and we always went there in the fall, and we'd be gone all year, and we'd come home in the summer just for the summer months and do a lot of work around the garden thing.
How many years were you at Pipestone?
I was there probably three years.
And at what
then-
age were you when you were there about?
I think around 11 or 12 when I first went. And then from there, I went to Flandreau.
Oh, you were at Flandreau too?
Yeah, then after Pipestone was only up to the 8th or 9th grade, and from there I went to Flandreau.
Okay.
And,
This is on another note, but in August we're going to have a history conference, and we're going to be talking about boarding schools. And I was just wondering, would you be interested in sitting on a panel talking about boarding schools in August?
yeah,
We're trying to get some of our tribal members that have, attended government school.
there are honorariums with them.
Oh yeah, right.
Everybody gets an honorarium nowadays.
There'll be enough for you for your green fees.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'll follow up on that with you.
Yeah.
But okay, you were going to government school, and your mother worked pretty much at home, and then
Yeah, at
she
home.
worked out,
We all worked at home, up until, while I went away. I don't know what, and we just came home in the summertime. And
What was the typical Christmas like at home? You remember?
I don't remember. There wasn't much. I just remember a Christmas tree, and
You had a Christmas tree?
yeah, I mean that's all I remember. And we used to have to come to church here, Stone Church, and Christmas Eve we were. acolytes or were altar boys when Father Grant was here. And my mother always sent us to church, but they never, they never came to church with us. But every Sunday they sent us to church, and my father, I don't ever remember him coming to church, but my mother made sure we come to church every Sunday, and we used to get along the creek once in a while. But there was an old lady. She used to walk down here. Her name was Tom. Anyway, it was Tom Ellam's wife, and if we missed church, she on the way back she'd stop in and she said, "Did you send the boys? We didn't see the boys in church." But we used to have to sit right down in the front there was a nun, Sister Amy. She was a nice nun, She's a disciplinarian-like person. But
was the hospital still?
The building was there. The building, there was a lot of tenants in there when I don't remember it as a hospital. No, but it was a building. They used to call that Monkey Island. It's, but I remember when it burned down too. It was after the war that, because I was driving by. I went to the Labor Temple in Green Bay looking for a job, and I come back and seen that smoke there. And me and Duck Shoes, Roy Skinner, we were coming from the Labor Temple in the morning. He said, Monkey Island was burning.
What did you ever participate in New Year's Hoyan?
Not very much. My mother, my folks would never let us go. Everybody used to come around, and where we live now, one time I remember John sneaking away, but they always made us stay home. But a lot of kids come there, and even white kids at that time. I always remember these kielbasas. They were Polish family. They was always with them guys their age. Well, I went to that Catholic school and knew a lot of the white kids too, but never went to Hoyani.
How was the layout of Oneida at that time? I mean, is it?
Well, Oneida, that was a big town at that time. I remember, the depot was there, and depot agent's house was there, and at one time there was even a dance hall there where that Shell station is now. Before Andy, there was a dance hall there, and Coonan's Tavern. Morgan's store burnt down. I don't know what time. It was early 30s. The first store burnt down, and I remember them rebuilding it. And then the farmer store, the guy that run it at that time was Bill Henricks. His wife, they called it the farm. And then there was a feed mill there, and that's where they got all the coal. And the cheese factory was there with the store, and that's when Spike Schrader came to Oneida. He came to Oneida as a cheesemaker. He come from De Pere. And he lived over there on Conde U, where Buck Stevens used to live, right across from the Mormon church. Mm-hmm. That's where he lived, him and his wife. But that's when he first came. And Bill Henricks were running it, and they had a boy and a girl, and that boy, he was always over by our place, or we were by his place, and he was really a spoiled kid, He had everything, That's why we were good friends, I guess, because that upstairs. Well, that building is still the same, I guess, and he had a lot of things there. But he went to school at Pine Grove, and we went to the Catholic school. So after school, old Bill Henricks would take us with him to go pick him up at Pine Grove Schoolhouse. Then there was a drugstore there, a drugstore, the Catholic school, church, and then old Harris, there was a post office building there across from Schrader School. I don't know if you remember that. Domi and them guys lived there after Harris. The old man Harris was the parents of Exilda, Spike Schrader's wife, and I don't know. They say they adopted her anyway, and people don't know whether she's Oneida or part Indian or what. But then there was two taverns. Van Rexel's ran the tavern where Beavers is now. Van Rexel built that tavern, and but when we were growing up, Pete Weinberg, and he had a big family there too. There was Weinberg and Coonens, and then the depot, and there was lumberyard there, and lumber shed. And there was a pickle factory along the railroad just past my house. Rob Elmer ran the pickle factory, and there was a sugar beet dump there, right across from where I lived. The pavement is still there, but there was a sidetrack there, and there used to be a lot of sugar beets be shipped out of here.
We're talking about Oneida and the size of it at the time. Now, have you ever heard any stories about Salt Fork Avenue and how it got its name?
I never heard as long as I could remember, it was, I was thinking maybe Joe Reed or somebody give it that name, and because it was, it's been that long, as long as
you can remember.
As long as I can remember, it was Salt.
What about Stagger Lane? Is that
Stagger Lane? That just come about, and August Firm put that. He had a row of houses down in there. And
that's just the new name. There.
Yeah, it was probably while I was in Pipestone or someplace, because I'd come back and Stagger Lane.
Okay. Now you went away to school, and you came back. What did you do once you left? When did you leave school? Let's put it that way.
Well, I never really came back to live here. I went from Pipestone to Flandreau, and the war was on, and my uncle Eugene, he was working in the arsenal in Rock Island, Illinois. So when I graduated from Flandreau in '42 or '43, I went from Flandreau down there, and then he told me to come down there and got me a job. It wasn't in arsenal. He tried to get me in arsenal, but I was 17 then when I finished high school, and tried to get me in that arsenal. But in the meantime, he got me a job there, and I roomed. We had sleeping room there, and he wasn't married at the time, and so he guided me pretty good. Got me the job and showed me how to save my money and how to spend my money and that kind of thing. Buy some decent clothes, and so then. I'd come home once in a while from Davenport. We lived in Davenport. He was living in Davenport then at that time. And so then, instead of that, then I see this show about the Merchant Marine. So then I was going to Chicago on the way home one time, and so I stopped in and joined that, merchant seaman, and that was in '43, and they sent me to Sheepshead Bay, New York. It's right out of Brooklyn for boot camp. They had a regular boot camp like like the Navy, I guess, and they teach you how to swim and all that, training. And but then when you graduate there, I had about 4 or 5 weeks of training there at Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and it was. Earl Hill, or Earl Skennet, he was there at the time. The Greaseball's brother, I don't know if you knew him.
I knew Greaseball.
Greaseball, but his brother, Earl, he was there at the time, but, and there was an Onondaga Indian there, named from Onondaga, New York. Dave Shenandoah was his name. But he was in a boxing team there at Sheepshead Bay there at Shenandoah. So I never really came back till after the war to live at Oneida with my folks. I was always since 37. I was either in government school and just during the summer months I'd come home. And then 1945.
Well, tell me a little bit about when you were in the Merchant Marines. Where did they ship you out to first?
Well, my first trip after the boot camp there, I shipped out of Baltimore, Maryland, and they made you join a union. I don't know if they made you join a union, but we got on a union ship. I think they call it a Seafarers International Union, and it was a AFL-CIO. And so then I shipped out of Baltimore and went, like I said, I went down to Wilmington, and we traveled in convoys, and we went down to Guantanamo Bay. I remember my first trip, and from there, we went down through the Panama Canal and through the Panama Canal. In the Pacific, we didn't travel in convoys. It's a single, these cargo ships, these merchant vessels, but they travel on a course, they zigzag all the way across. And it took us about 40 days to get from Panama Canal to New Zealand, where we went. And during that time, we had one of these typhoons, and we was in a typhoon about 5 days, and I was 17 years old. That was it was just something exciting. Or at that age, I didn't realize how bad these typhoons were until, well, we were lucky. We had lifeboats on the side of the ships there, and we lost a lifeboat and one of the rafts. And when a lot of ships got into port, there was a lot of damage to some of them ships, from that typhoon that had been in there. But in the South Pacific, the ships always traveled by themselves. They didn't travel in convoys. The North Atlantic was always rough. So that was a trip. I was about partway across the South Pacific when I turned 18, my birthday, and I got back from South Pacific in June, and I came home, and that's June. I left. I had a short visit at home. Then I went to. That's when I met Herb LeCount. He was from here. I didn't know him at the time, but I knew that he was going back to New York City to ship out. So that's when him and I got together. He just passed away here about 2 weeks ago. So we shipped together about 3-4 trips. Him and I first shipped to Russia. We went across the North Atlantic in convoys, and then we went to Scotland and got in another convoy, and a convoy that went to Murmansk, Russia. There was probably about maybe 10, 20 ships. I forget how many, but we had to escort, Navy escorts all the way, and they continually dropping these depth charges all the way up in zigzag, and so this convoy, these escorts, they took a convoy up there, and they unload you there, and in the 30 days, they bring one back. They take one up and they bring one back, so they rotate. And well, our ship, we went from Murmansk, we went into Russia a little farther up the river. I think it's the White River or something farther in to unload our ship. And so when we were rendezvousing with the convoy at that time, we ran aground in a river. It was a river like this Fox River, that's how I remember it. And, we ran aground there, and so we missed the convoy. So we stayed up there for 2 months. So we had to wait for the next escort. They got us off the ground after the tide's supposed to had it's the highest tide at a certain time of the month, and then they get them tugs and tow you off. And so we spent 2 months and came back from there, and then I made trips to England. Like, they were short trips too, maybe 3 months or so. You go over there and back, and then I made one trip to England, one trip to northern France, and one trip to southern Marseille, France. And on our way over, that was in April of '45, I think, because I remember before I shipped out, I met Christopher John in Baltimore. He was in the Army, and that's where we were in Baltimore the day Roosevelt died. That was so I always remember that day, and everything was closed up then. Well, I shipped out of there. Well, Chris was stationed there, and so halfway across the Atlantic again, that's when the war in Europe ended. And so we continued on to Marseille, and so I met Indians at different ports, in the Army or whatever, and so then after the war in Europe was over, we figured, well, we all going back home, we took on some GIs. It was a battalion that cleaned out these canals, all the damage in the rivers, sunken boats and that. That's kind of battalion we picked up, and we're going to bring them home. But when you leave, you leave port, you leave under sealed orders until you get out so far, and then you open up your orders to ship. And here we, instead of coming home, we went to from Marseille, France, we went to Panama Canal again. And then from there we went to the South Pacific. We went to the Philippines, because the war was still on over in Japan. And so we went to, I forget how many days we took to get from Canal to Manila. We went into Manila. That's where we took that Army outfit. We had the equipment and a few soldiers on. And so then we got them there, and I don't know how many years they had been out. They thought they were all going home. They get points to get home, but they got over there and sent to the Philippines. And well, then we loaded up again there in the Philippines. We loaded up an airborne outfit. I think it was 11th Airborne that was over in the South Pacific, and we loaded up the headquarters battalion on our ship, and it must have been for an invasion of Japan. So we left the Philippines to go north, and then we got as far as Subic Bay, and we got into another typhoon, but the ships were all ordered into port, so we went into port, and well, then when the storm was over, then we went up and at Okinawa, and to another island there where Ira Hayes was, Iwo Jima. Mm-hmm. Well, we got there, and then that's when the war ended. The war ended, so they sent our ship right on into Tokyo. So all the ships were coming into Tokyo, and then we got in Tokyo Bay. The place was just full of ships, all of us anchored, and it was stormy too while we were in there. And so we didn't get ashore in Tokyo, but from Tokyo then we waited we were probably in there about a week, and we went in right after the peace was signed. I guess that's when the Missouri went in there. And, so we waited for our orders, and we had that airborne outfit equipment with us. So they sent us up to the northern part of Japan. They call it Sendai. And so we got up there, and there was nobody unload our ships. We had otherwise they always had port battalions unload your ships. So we had to unload our own ships, and the war was over, and we just dumped that stuff on a harbor. I mean, on a dock, and we was glad to. So as soon as we got our ship unloaded, well, then they shipped us back to go back to the States. Well, we was up in the northern part. We thought we'd end up in Frisco or someplace, and we come all down the northern route all the way down through the canal again. There was no room in the ports, and then we came into New Orleans. That's where I came back from, New Orleans, and Well, during that time, the merchant seamen, it was a civilian. They didn't have no military status. They were just seamen, and I was subject to the draft. And I came home, and my father says, "The FBI has been looking for you." And he said, "What did you do?" I said, "I don't know, but I guess they sent me a draft notice, and I suppose I never responded." Well, then I thought, well, they're going to, the war was ended, and I thought, geez, they're liable to draft me again, so I made one more trip. So I thought I better ship out again, and then I did get a draft notice, and I was overseas. I went to Italy then, from there to the southern part of Italy, and so I just sent a letter that I couldn't appear at the draft board, and so then, then they didn't draft me, and then when I came home, then I stayed home, but then they gave us a exemption. You apply for an exemption, then to exempt from draft again. So I never did get drafted. So, but
what was your primary responsibility, your duties or your role, as a merchant seaman?
well, just as a deckhand, mostly, as an able-bodied seaman. We're classified able-bodied seaman. That may be
Just everything, huh?
Yeah, all deck tying and working the wheel, you 4 on and 8 off or something like that, and you have a different turn at lookout, and then different hours at the wheel, and then you get up in the nest, crow's nest, and you're on busy all the time when you're at sea.
Well, you had more sea time than a lot of guys that were in the Navy, huh?
Oh yeah, I mean that's all I had was sea time. I figured I had about 32 months of sea time. That's at sea. One of the things with the merchant seamen, the pay was more. When we was 3 miles off from the United States, our pay was like $82 a month. And then after we got out, and they called it a war zone, after you're 3 miles out of the United States, you got $100 extra a month. And then when you got in if your convoy or anything got an attack or anything, or air attack, you get a one-time bonus, like $100 bonus. But you only get that only once while you're on that ship. So when you got over in France, you always got that $100 bonus in there. So we made good money, but we didn't have no USOs or USO whatever. We didn't have no benefits, and if any of us got hurt, we went to public hospital and that kind. And you didn't get no veterans status. Like that, but like I say, I was at sea about 32 months out of 3 years, and you didn't hang around home. You didn't want to get drafted.
Yeah.
But it was a good life as far as living condition. It was better than the Navy. They had regular chefs on the cook for the seamen, and then the officers' quarters. And the thing that I thought it was real funny. We had a black guy worked in a mess hall, and he was a college graduate, and here he was a mess boy on a ship, and he knew that too. He was well educated, but he was a hustler. He did all kinds of things, and that first trip I went into New Zealand. There's a tribe over there that looked like Indians. They're Maoris, they call them Maoris, yeah. Mm-hmm. And when I got in a trip, they thought I was one of them. They said, "What are you doing on a damn Yankee ship?" And I didn't know what they meant, And here there's Maoris. They look just like Indians, and they had a sort of a reserve. This black guy, he took a day off and went up to their I didn't have no interest in that kind of stuff, And so that was.
Okay, what year did you come home then?
I came home in 45,
45.
46.
46.
Well, I got married in 45,
Oh.
but I made one more trip over to Italy, and just so.
What was you? Tell us who you married.
I married Angeline Skenador. She was a bartender for August Firm. Her and Halima John, they both. August Firm had these two girls working for them, so that's who I married.
Okay.
First woman that looked at me.
And how many children do you have?
I have 8 children. There's 5 boys and 4 girls. 5 boys and 3 girls.
Why don't you give us their names?
The oldest one's birthday's today, Kathy. I think she's 56 years old. Kathy and Barbara Ann and Monica is the girls, and Richard is the oldest boy. Richard, Greg, and Ralph, and Joseph. So I guess that's Richard, Greg, Ralph, and Jamie, and Joe. So that's 8 children. And she was a stay-at-home mom, She practically raised him, and my work didn't keep me at home much.
How many grandchildren do you have?
Oh, I don't know. I just probably 30 or 35. I don't know. She counts them every once in a while,
Okay.
but
She keeps track.
she keeps track.
Okay.
But
All right.
some of them I don't even meet till they're about 10, 11 years old. Well, you know how it is like that.
Oh, yeah.
People don't get married nowadays. They just live together, and they're all, nobody's any different. And,
All over the place.
yeah, it is.
When all right, after you came home, and you were married, where did you come to? Where did you go to when you?
Well, I lived right, just me and my wife. First, we lived in that little house across from where I live now, that little red house. I guess Coonan owned that one time. That was just me and my wife. And well, then I looked for work around Green Bay, and it was always hard to. You'd get some construction work, It's mostly seasonal work. Like around here, all we got was seasonal. We were like the migrants today, Hispanics that come here. That's the kind of work we would get, pitching peas at the pea vinery and all that kind of manual work on the boats, on the docks there. Worked on the boats as a stevedore. Whenever a ship come in, that old Tibbetts, he used to run lights, and sometimes he'd come out to Oneida and get us out of the bar when the ship come in, and get us to go to work there. Well, then you work till the ship was unloaded too. Sometimes 15, 16 hours unloading. A lot of times it was just pulpwood that you unloaded at them paper mills. And talk about hard work, it was just manual work. And after it got easy, when these canning companies got machinery, they didn't come get us then with the pitchfork. But, well, then you got tired of that. Well, then I went to Milwaukee to look for work. But, before that, my brother John and Bill King, they got a job in Davenport, Iowa. They were building a big aluminum plant, Alcoa aluminum plant. And so we went, John called me up. Him and Bill were down there. They called me up, and I was living with my aunt, my wife, and we were living at my aunt and in the homestead there, and he called me up and he says, "To work here, you want to come down to work?" So that's I went. My aunt gave me money to get down there, and had a car and went to work there. And it was for Bethlehem Steel, and Bethlehem Steel used to bring in these Mohawks to do the steel. There was a lot of steel erection, and they brought in these Mohawks from Caughnawaga. It's over near Montreal. They brought about maybe 30, 40 guys, all Mohawks, and they did the riveting and the steel erection, and me and John, we were in a ditch there with a pick and shovel, and they said, "What are you guys doing in the ditch?" He says, they knew we were Indians, and go down to the Union Hall and tell the Union Hall, you want to work with the Mohawk, or you want to come out here as an apprentice." So we went down to the Union Hall, and the guy sent us out, and that's how we got into ironwork. Well, then we got into the union and everything, and so then after that, after the job finished, we worked down there about a year or two, and Bethlehem Steel used to ship to Mohawks, and the U.S. Steel did that too. Wherever you go, they had big jobs. They had Mohawks. They bring them from Canada. A lot of them from around Montreal and Six Nation Reservation, and so you meet the Mohawks all over the country. And so that's when there was no work around Green Bay. Like I say, it's just manual work, and so then I went to Milwaukee and did a lot of ironwork there because I had to belong to the union and that. And when there was no work there, I lived I moved my family in that there, and then when even working in Milwaukee was slack in our trade, we'd go to Chicago, we'd go down there and work in Chicago till work picked up, and so I worked I like to work in Chicago. What were
some of the projects you worked on? I know you worked up in New York and up in Mackinac.
Yeah, we worked on the Mackinac Bridge in 1955. I was living in Milwaukee then, see, we always like to go on riveting jobs. It's a four-man crew, and you're in a riveting gang, and you have the heater. And so me and John and Indian Louie, he was a Stockbridge Indian. We went to work on the Mackinac Bridge when they put them towers up. All them towers are riveted, So they had a gang. We were on North Towers. There was me and Johnny and Indian Louie, and we had a Polish heater, Big Frank Kozowski, and they had a gang on each one of them towers. So on the North Towers, there's one on each side, and they had a Mohawk gang across from us. And you know how these guys, they try to get you to race, they always say, "Oh, they drove so many rivets today," and Indian Louie, he always wanted to try to show up the Mohawks, but we always just kept pace with them. We wouldn't, they just wanted to get more work done. So there was a Oneida gang on one tower, one side of the tower, and the Mohawk gang, they were out of Detroit. So that first year on the towers, then they shut the job down in November when the weather got bad. So, but I didn't go back up there. My brother John went up there for the spinning the cable. He was up there for a whole year, the whole family. But then, even while I was came back here, there was no work. I worked in Chicago a lot, and the last job, the Civic Center, usually downtown, and I relocated to Chicago in 1958 with my family, and they had that relocation program, sending tribes to the cities there, but I was already in a union, so I took my family and moved to Chicago. So in 1960, when the racial riots started, I was in a neighborhood. It was just west of Garfield Park, and that was the dividing line. The black people and the white people, that Garfield Park was the dividing line there. And these people in west of there, they were, when the blacks started moving west, they started selling out, and so I had my family. I had about 6 kids then, and it really got rough. Martin Luther King came there in March, and oh boy, I thought, I'm going to get out of this. So I moved my family back to Oneida because I didn't want my family mixed up in that kind of environment, because even in the neighborhood, there was a big apartment right across from where we lived that was had 24-hour guard police protection on it, because there was a black family living in that apartment. It was a big apartment.
Okay, we're talking about you working down in Chicago. in about 1958?
I started, well, off and on, even when I lived in Milwaukee, we used to work on like Prudential building. When there was no work, we worked as riveting gang or something like that, in the riveting gang, and Prudential building, and then, but in '58, then there was a lot of work down there. There was, Chicago, there was coming in from all over the country, and that's when John came back from California, and we were working on that Calumet Expressway, that Skyline Bridge that goes over the canal there. There was riveting gangs coming there, and that's when he came back from California. And so him and I worked on that, and Russell Skenador, he was an iron worker, and so we worked on that Skyline. And there was people out of Detroit, the Mohawks come out of Detroit work on that bridge. There was quite a few Indians working on that bridge at that time, and then them steel mills, like the U.S. Steel had a big mill there, and Bethlehem Steel, all steel mills down on that south side.
Yeah.
There was all kinds of work in there, and they were coming in from all over the country. That was a really, what do you call, depression or whatever it was, but there was work in Chicago and in the mills. And so I worked a lot in Chicago, and Civic Center, one of the biggest. The last time I worked in Chicago was in '70. I was on a council here then, and I was, I had to work. I had a family, and I worked on that Sears Towers. My brother Mark and I worked down there. I worked around Chicago quite a bit, and pretty well. At that time, the reason I worked around Chicago quite a bit was they put them expressways, and there was a lot of riveting on them expressways, so you could go to work anytime you wanted, or wherever you wanted. And we were noted for that, Me and Johnny and Mark worked together a lot, but sometimes we'd get a Mohawk. And we worked a lot of expressways, and at Ohio Street there, that was one of them bridges like they got in Green Bay here, that drawbridge, and one worked all winter through there. And so that was a good place to work. I think it still is that way.
When did, after you worked there, where did you go after Chicago?
Well, I came home here, and then I worked around here. I worked at these nuclear plants. I worked over at Charmin. Charmin was starting a big expansion. That was in '63. I think that was when Kennedy got shot. Charmin had a great big expansion then, and I worked there about 3 or 4 years, steady, just at Charmin. All the steel erection and that. So I worked there, and until my oldest son, until Richie got old enough, and when he graduated from high school, I think it was in '68, and I asked him, I says, you plan on continuing education, or you want to go to work? And he wanted to go to work. So then I told my boss, I knew the business agent in Milwaukee, and I says, well, I'll go down to Milwaukee. There's a lot of work then. So we went down there, and the job was on 6th Street there. There's a powerhouse there. And I knew the superintendent. There was an outfit out of Chicago. And I asked him if they'd need men. He said, take my boy with me. He says, well, if you get him a permit. So I went down there, I got him a permit. So that's when he started Ironwork. So I worked around there, and that was in '68, I think. Then after that, I went to work on they would start building these nuclear plants. And that was a good work. There's a lot of work there. So I worked on 2 of them. There's 2 creeks, they call it, and then the Kewanee nuclear plant, 2 nuclear plants right together. There was a lot of work there, and good working conditions. And in '67, it ain't no regret, but I got mixed up in the tribal politics.
I was going to ask you, what year did you start in the tribal politics?
'67.
What prompted you to do that? I mean, were you involved in any
No, I wasn't
politics
involved.
before that?
No, I never involved in there. And,
Something must have pulled you in.
no, well, you know how Norbert was. Norbert Hill.
Well,
I was at a picnic or something, And they had an election. I never paid no attention to that New Deal, and I know a lot about New Deal, but I never got involved in it. And Norbert says, "Why don't you run for chairman?" And him and Oscar Archquit, they asked me. I said, "What do you do?" He said, "Oh, we meet once a month." He said, "There ain't much to do." But so I said, "Okay." And well, there was only maybe like 40, 50 votes to get in. I don't know. I don't remember. But Woody ran. Woody was in there somewheres, and so he's the only one running against me. And I got on, and once a month, you had a meeting, but you meet in that old CC camp, and there really wasn't much to do, but there wasn't really much to argue over, just land. Well, then they started housing too at that time, and so. But you know how tribal politics are. These people, they're good at fighting with each other. They shouldn't. Our tribal government it hasn't changed yet today. And I was wondering, how come all these people are what did I do to them? And then you just defend yourself and try to do what you think is right. And I always thought, I realized now. I said, Indian people, I guess the other people too, fight among themselves. Look at it in Ireland, but I said that's why we lost this country. They fought amongst themselves all the time, and it's no different now. You go to tribal politics. Even while I was in that 23 years, and it's still the same way. They bicker among themselves, and here it hasn't changed. They either just get even with other. If they all went the same direction, like we're lucky we got gaming. If it wasn't for gaming, these people don't realize what we have here. Just this health, this medication alone, and they're complaining. And boy, I'm glad I'm out of it. But if Don Wilson would have stayed, I'd have stayed. But Don Wilson, you know how they picked on him. These guys that came back, they said, "Oh, you got a white man doing your job." And well, geez, if you want any work done, you had to get a white guy to do it. That's the way I see it. And Don was good, people came to me with their problems, and Don was the administrator. Tell him to do it, and he'd take care of it. The first one I had was Bob Christian. I had to fire him, but I mean, it's. But if Don wouldn't have left you, well, he's too nice a guy to be involved in that kind of thing,
When you started, Percy, how many were there on the council?
There was only, I think there was a chairman, treasurer, secretary, and what's the other one?
Vice chair.
4. Vice chair. Yeah, there was only 4. And Oscar and Norbert. It took me a while to learn that, after about 2 years, them guys, I was more or less used. And then after I found out that, boy, I said, they were nice guys, but they wanted to go their way. And me, I just wanted to go the right way, I didn't care. And it took me a long time, but I was lucky. I was surrounded by people like Anna John and Priscilla Manders and Audrey Dockstader, and Amelia, them people were interested in the community. Look what they did with built a nursing home just on government grants and soliciting money. I don't know what them women would have done if we'd had a casino. Well, they're part of the startup at the bingo, them people were civic minded about the community. That's.
What kind of compensation would you receive when you first started out on the committee?
Well, we used to get, I think, $5 a meeting, something like that. It wasn't, well, that's why I had to work, and even after, I worked construction, and then Irene was my vice chairman. One time, I think I was working in Chicago then, because I had to make a living, and Irene said, "When are you going to come back here?" Boy, them people are awful. They're picking on her. And, well, she was a nice lady, She was a different kind of lady. She wasn't feisty like Anna. Anna will tell you right to your face. well, you know, you can deal with people like that, you know, and they honest and they interest in the community. And Irene's interest was education, you know, and Anna was in a community, you know, so them kind of people, it's, and when they come to you, Anna, boy, she'd even tell me right to my face, and you know, so I didn't mind that. But I was out working most of the time. But
Was there a great deal of change when they went from a 4-person council to a 9-person council?
I think the BIA got I don't know. Yeah, it was a change. You know, more councilmen, but there was no more money in it. There was no money in it. It's just a bigger council, and you had to get grants and that. That's all that was available. And like Norbert, I don't know. We got some kind of planning grant from the state in the '70s. You know, during Nixon years, they come out with a lot of money for Indian country. You know, I think the Republicans helped the Indians out the most. You know, because the first time I ever went to a convention, you know, I could never go to a convention, take out from work. I used to send Norbert all the time because I had to work and feed a family, you know. And in '70, I went to Kansas City for a convention, and that's when they had that self-determination thing. And then you join the, you know, Norbert and Arvid Miller and there was 4 or 5 guys that formed that Great Lakes Intertribal Council, and the object was to get grants for the tribes in Wisconsin, and there was a lot of money in that federal government, or education money. Was, you know, as long as you had and after I got involved in there, you know, even in Great Lakes we fight with each other. You know, we were because we had the biggest group, and the Chips got the most money because they had 5 bands or 6 bands. You know, so we tried to get our share out of it, and we were able to pull our share out of there. And you know, if you could administer your own business, you know, you got your own grant according to your population. And that's one of those things Norbert was trying to. He was trying to get a voting change in a structure of like NCAI. Then, because the 5 bands that we could control at Great Lakes, them 6 bands of Chippewas, if they had changed that voting structure, but they never did change that voting structure. But it was a good organization. It's just that self-determination was, you know, you pulled out what you could, pull out your share. And Oneida had a big group here.
When do you see the biggest change begin to take effect during your time in office? If you had to look back at.
Well, I think with that Great Lakes organization, you know, it was housing and that, and it went according to population. It gradually took a change in, but then in the '70s, when they gave out grants, what is that, the 76th centennial or bicentennial or whatever it was, and each tribe got a $100,000 grant, and that's what we built that health center with, you know. But a percentage of it was for labor, and only so much for material, and that's the way they doled out the money. Each tribe got 100,000. I think we got 105 or 6. I don't know. And so during the '70s is when it changed. And then when gaming started, that's when bingo started. I mean, when it really materialized. I mean, when it started in the Civic Center, you know, how it all started. The women started that and finally grew. And I just remember, I remember one time when they had me at Civic Center, almost says, what do we, could we put about 10% away of our bingo money for a building? I said, yeah, go ahead, and the council approved it 10%. I didn't realize how much money they were making at that bingo. And, we could have made a lot more if they weren't stealing half of it, I guess. The thieves here that, and I think the only reason for that was we didn't enforce accountability. That's why they could do that, because when I went down to the Seminoles in Florida to see that, they didn't only have Indians, they had non-Indians working and they were accountable, like for them pull tabs. We really got lipped off on these pull tabs. And it was inside jobs here, a lot of these people, what them 6 guys got caught, they were gonna go to Hawaii. If we had accountability, but the people didn't, it took too much time for them. They didn't want to be bothered with that. I think that's why, but after that, well then, to me, these priorities are not going in the right direction. You take like Anna and them people, they wanted a nursing home and they went out and got it. And here we should have the same, our health center, we should have a top-notch health center. I mean, it finally got it, the priority was backwards. They got the tribal school first, where we should have had I even think we should have had our own hospital here. And now, as much money as is here, we should fix up that nursing home, make it just first class, top-notch. I don't care who's in there or what, but pay people that want to come to work here. You take like everybody wants to work at Fort Howard or Procter and Gamble. That's the way they should do it. I mean, here all you're top heavy on business. The government. That's but that health center. I mean, to me, there's a lot of excess money that, that's a beautiful center. And look at all the wasted space when, I mean, there's a lot of, them architects, they're still taking us. I mean, Nichols and Baroni, they were good. They were the architects on our nursing home. And, when we got a grant for that 76 bicentennial, whatever it was, that had so much, and I don't know, it was a million. The women, anyway, they come up, you had to come up with a motif that, your culture or something, and I don't know if it's Amelia or Anne or somebody says, well, let's build a longhouse. Nobody knew how to build a longhouse, And who, well, we went to Lou Baroni, and he looked in the books, and he's the one that did, showed us how to build a longhouse. Well, then we had labor there, we had all these youths working there. Geez, we didn't even know how to build a damn longhouse, Well, most of these people were Christianized anyway, and then when that militancy come back, AIM and all them, they start going back traditional when it suits them. But I don't understand it. I never did understand. I don't even remember. I never seen an Indian dance till I went to Pipestone, Minnesota. I was 11, 12 years old when I seen that. So I was raised here in this stone church. Christian.
Well, through the course, how many years did you serve as tribal chairman?
23.
23.
Except for that 82 when your buddy come in here.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't have no regrets, there was a lot of things, a lot of people involved, but it's a rough road to hoe, but it shouldn't be that way.
But the tribe has made a lot of growth.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of growth. You can't beat the growth. And
what do you recommend to the youth of today to prepare for tomorrow?
Well, education, professional. I set aside some of my money for postgraduate work or something, like for doctors and physicians, that kind of we don't need no more lawyers. We got enough lawyers, but I mean, professional people. I mean, well, I guess we got a few, you know, but there should have been a lot more of all the money that in the 70s what Nixon administration put. You know, I used to go to these Great Lakes meetings, and the first thing I look at the budget, and I'd always contest that, you know. You've seen a lot of them budgets, you know, and I always said, the universities are the ones that ripped us off, you know. We'd get in there, a consultant, $100 a day for a consultant. Native American, he'd get a $5 stipend or something like that, or we'd get mileage to go to some, and I used to question all that, but, you know, I was, the Chippewas control that, so they rubber stamp everything, you know. They were happy with what we got. I mean, I was happy too, but I mean, it could have been a lot better. I mean, I made that remark in a meeting one time at Great Lakes. I said, you guys, everything, she was a nice lady, Vita Stone. She's a nice lady. She was an educated, you know, education person, and her people were the Chippewas. And I said, everything Vita brings here, you guys rubber stamp. And I bet you it wasn't a week later I got a letter from her. I mean, all the chairmen got letters, and it was pertaining to that remark. But I mean, she's got a lot of, she was a mentor to a lot of them kids up there. But they don't all go the same direction, but I don't have no regrets.
What are you doing now in terms of your retirement? Have you been able to play as much golf as you want?
Oh yeah, you know, even more. You know, I'm enjoying life. You know, I probably a lot of. I don't. You know, the tribe. They don't owe me nothing. You know, they fixed up my house. You know, I was really surprised. I don't know if you know Doug House. He called me up one time and he says, Percy, he said, I got a contract. You know, I asked for help and windows or fix up my house. And he said, I got a contract to remodel your house. I said, good. Well, you know, me and the houses didn't get along too good anyway, I said, I don't care who does. Then what he says, I got the contract, he says, but I got a bunch of white guys doing it. I said, I don't care who does it. And he had a good contractor come in there. They came in there, like this time of the year, or in the wintertime, siding, roofing, and windows and everything. And they really did a top-notch job and got it done. I think it must cost like maybe $20,000 to the contract was. So that's what they did for me, and I didn't expect. Tribe don't owe me nothing, you know. That's the way I figure. And the tribe don't owe anybody anything, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, but you do what you got to do and enjoy it. If you don't, that's when I belong in a union. I never burned no bridges, you know. If I didn't like the contractor the way he was treating me, I didn't say nothing. I seen too many, you know. Sometimes you have to come around again. And I didn't ever wanted to eat crow, you know. And, I learned that with the union a long time ago. Sometimes you had to come back and work for them people, whether you like them or not. And but we don't have no work ethic here, and I always blame it on the 70s. We're the ones that created them. CETA workers and all them. You couldn't discipline them kids, you know. I mean, it shouldn't be up to us. It's home is where it's to get the discipline. You know, your kids are always working. My kids are always working. It starts at home. It doesn't. The ones that work will work, you know. So that's too bad. They think we owe them something.
Yeah.
Look at how much this population has grown.
Tremendous, tremendous. Well, have I forgotten anything?
No, I don't know. I just look at how much our enrollment has grown. The first settlement we got, I don't know, was it with the Stockbridges? When I came in as chairman, our enrollment was like around 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, in 1968, we were given a year to enroll everybody to share in that claim. And after a year, our enrollment jumped to 6,000 something. But then from then on, it didn't quit.
No, that's right up there.
Yeah. I would say that when these people want a per capita payment, you know, they should invest in this community. And if they don't, we'll be like, you remember the 52 cents we used to get?
Oh, yeah.
That's what it'll be. We used to look forward to it. We didn't have nothing then, you know. And no, I got no regrets and enjoying life and
Good, good.
living on my original grandfather's homestead, you know, and no rent to pay. I was lucky I got it in trust. I bought it from my uncle Eugene. He wanted Bob Applin's wife wanted to buy frontage. Coleman, he said, what do you think he wants it for? You know, she just wanted, I suppose they invest in property, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the last, you know, they'd come down the line. Well, my father was the only ones that had kids, and that's all. And when Coleman got it, he used to lease it out to that guy lives on Johinko farm now.
Oh, okay.
And he used to lease it out to him, and all he gave him for it was the taxes. He paid the taxes for that. Well, then when I got it, you know, when I bought it from Coleman, I asked the farmer to go halves. He wouldn't go halves, or I said, well, after taxes going up, so I says he didn't want to go halves, or he didn't want to go up either. So I told him, shit, that land was all clear then. Now look at it. It's a game farm.
Yeah.
It all growed over. I mean, when we was kids, we used to farm all that. But I mean, for me to do anything, I'd invest in implements and tractor. Oh, Christ, guys, I'm glad I got a snowblower. That's
For you, it's time to go fishing and golfing.
yeah, just golfing. That's fishing.
Well, we want to thank you for coming in and sharing